Humans are super intuitive, and so when humans are collectively fascinated by one similar topic or idea and come up with many different interpretations of a core theme, are like enthralled by that topic, that's a good sign that that topic has something to say. It has some sort of truth within it. That doesn't mean that it is explained correctly. It doesn't mean that it is interpreted correctly, but it means that there's something there because humans are super intuitive and we're all collectively picking up on it. So, this idea of an apocalypse or a great period of transformation or a new earth or a whatever, there is something to it. That doesn't mean that any of the interpretations are correct. They're probably all a little bit correct and a lot human bias, agenda, unconscious, repressed emotion. And I think that extremism is a result of clinging to certainty, trying to force answers for things that we cannot have answers for. And this is why people create stories like a god coming down from the sky and scooping up the good people, or the earth splitting into two, or a whole new physical earth being created. People come up with these stories because they're trying to find a way to understand things that we cannot. They're trying to force something that we intuitively understand to fit into our ability to comprehend, into our physical reality, which is just not possible. Just like when you dream, there will likely be some information that your unconscious mind or your spirit guides or your higher self or your ancestors are trying to give you. The dream will contain elements of information that is being given to you, and also a lot of your own personal imagination, your own biases, your own feelings, your own ability to comprehend. And just like when you wake up from that dream, you are ultimately the one interpreting it, and there is no possible way for it to be interpreted 100% correct. There is only interpreting it in the way that you are currently able to comprehend. So, I want to go over my interpretation of the apocalypse, or this period of great transformation that we can all sense, and this revelation that I had about the book of Revelation. Okay, so first of all, the actual origin of the word apocalypse is not a scary doomsday. It is to uncover or reveal. So, this idea of an apocalypse is really just an idea that hidden things that need to be addressed, but they've been hidden and suppressed, will purge themselves, will rise to the surface, and will be essentially like you'll have to meet that repressed hidden thing, and it will be worked through. It will be transformed. It will be met face to face and dealt with. And the book of Revelation is a description of a vision, a prophetic vision. And just like any other vision or dream, it is going to contain elements of like very broad, complex symbolism and metaphor that is meant to convey a very adaptable piece of information. And it's going to contain elements of the receiver's own imagination, biases, ability to comprehend. The way that I read the book of Revelation, as somebody who is not a Christian but thinks that all divine, like all beliefs contain divine inspiration within them, and it's up to the interpreter to decide what that means, and it's up to the people taking in the interpretation to decide what that means for themselves. Like, it's not a strict, hard, fast, this is what this means. The interpreter is interpreting their own vision, and the people taking in that interpretation also get to decide. So to me, it reads like a lot of overactive imagination with some divine inspiration and symbolism within it. And the thing that I've recently realized is the part that says there there will be a new heaven and a new earth, for the old one had passed away. First of all, this is metaphor, meaning great transformation, death and rebirth. Second of all, and then it says, and there will be no more sea. Okay? And in dream interpretation and any sort of like metaphorical vision interpretation, large bodies of water, oceans, seas, usually symbolize the unconscious mind, okay? And the surface of the ocean, things coming up to the surface, is things coming up to the subconscious. But the ocean and underneath the ocean is the unconscious, the unknown, what is hidden in the unconscious mind. And from my perspective, the unconscious mind, it does hold just automatic functioning and stuff like that. The unconscious mind is where the things that enter your mind, your perception, your level of awareness, and your conscious mind thinks that it can't handle it, either because it's too much information, it's not necessary, or because it's in some way painful, or your conscious mind doesn't know how to deal with it. So the unconscious mind has both automatic functioning and repressed emotional issues. And I am of the belief that repressed emotional issues are the reason for everything that we consider bad, okay? Are the reason for everything that we consider evil. I don't believe that anybody is inherently evil. I don't believe anybody is born evil or that their soul is inherently evil, okay? I think that people do bad things because of repressed emotions that they don't know how to deal with. And I think the level at which the bad thing is, like how evil it is probably proportionate to how many lifetimes they've been trying to learn and overcome the same exact issue and refusing to do so. Or it's probably like just a plethora of things like opportunity, home life, past incarnations, all sorts of things. But regardless, evil things are a result of repressed, unconscious emotional issues. This is what I believe. And when we look at Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, it kind of shows something similar because he talks about periods where the collective unconscious brings up all of these repressed issues to the surface to be purged. And this is when we see periods in society where there's a lot of strife, where there is a lot of power dynamics, where there is a lot of injustice, where there is a lot of war and conflict. This is periods of time where the collective unconscious has issues that are coming up to the surface to be purged and worked through. So when the book of Revelation says, and there will be no more sea. And it also talks, I can't remember it fully because ADHD, but it does talk a lot about judgment and things of this nature, which from my interpretation is not necessarily any sort of divine being judging anybody. It is more self-judgment of, uh, you're judging your ability to allow things to come to the surface to be dealt with. Okay. And in this, I'm getting this right now. This is crazy. That like this idea of like hell or the underworld is really just going to the depths of your unconscious mind because it's painful. It's not easy. So this idea of like hell is really just going to the unconscious. And the judgment aspect is self-judgment, is how you choose to judge yourself, basically. So there will be no more sea. What that means to me is that as we go through this period, this intense period of collective transformation where things become uncovered and revealed, we are slowly learning to be able to handle the issues that we would typically repress so that they don't have to go to our unconscious mind. So essentially, for me, this is how it has played out on an individual level, is that it started off with things that have been repressed in my unconscious for my entire life, for 30 years at this point, things that have been repressed. So the first thing that happened was all these things that I had repressed for my entire life. Then, as I start to get a grip on those things, it starts to be that things that are new things come up. Things that like I haven't yet experienced or dealt with, but my mind wants to repress them because it doesn't want to deal with them. But my conscious mind goes, wait a second, let's see if we can handle this. Whereas before, it would have went straight to my unconscious mind. Now my conscious mind is going, wait a second, let me see if we can handle this. And so I believe that collectively speaking, first of all, we are all individuals in a collective. So there's going to be a lot of people going through this on an individual level. So both individually, people will have opportunities to go through this period of purging their unconscious and learning to not allow things to go to their unconscious anymore, suppressed emotions to go to their unconscious anymore. They will learn, they will be given opportunities. It doesn't mean people are going to take it. but they will be given opportunities to, instead of repressing those emotions, work with them consciously. And I think this is also why we see a huge rise in what people are calling spiritual psychosis. If somebody is not actually diagnosed with a psychotic disorder, they're just having a very ungrounded spiritual experience. I think it's a usually, maybe not always, a result of being given the opportunity to work through issues you would normally repress and still forcing them to be repressed, which will then cause people to project things they can't accept onto other people, project their dark parts onto other people, and also to double down and make excuses for themselves on why they are right and everybody else is wrong, when it's really not about, you're wrong, I'm right. It's just about, this is the experience. How am I going to make sense of it? And how am I going to sort through it? Okay. So I think that people are, on an individual level, a lot of people are being given an opportunity to work through repressed issues and learn how to not send things to the unconscious. Learn how to instead take experiences that are painful and deal with them up front. And so I think that's, this opportunity is happening on an individual level, and it's also going to happen on a collective level. And I think that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and there will be no more sea, is this idea that the collective unconscious, represented by a sea, a large body of water, the unconscious mind, there will be no more unconscious to send your painful experiences to. We will transcend the idea of sending our painful experiences to. And then there's an even more interesting part that I just thought about this morning in the book of Revelation, because people are obsessed with this idea of the devil and demons, and they call it many different things, reptilian overlords and all this other shit, okay? It's all just us projecting our own shit onto external enemies. But it talks about the beast will be overcome, arguably our collective unconscious, um, and will be sent to basically hell or whatever for 1,000 years, and then will be allowed to come back to the surface one more time. And first of all, I want to say that, like, time frames when it comes to like metaphorical shit doesn't really matter. I think that one, there's no objective time frame that can be thought of, because it's ultimately up to human beings individually and collectively how things play out. But also, I feel like 1,000 years is just a weird thing to say. It could be decades, it could be thousands of years. Who knows? But I think that what this is saying is that it's kind of like when you go through personal lessons and you overcome a lesson. And so you don't have to, like with your guides or with your higher self or with your ancestors, you overcome a personal lesson and you don't have to deal with that lesson for a while. But then maybe a few months later, or even a few years later, it's brought back up. And the reason that it's brought back up is usually understood that the guides are being like, okay, let's see how you handle it this time. After going through everything you've gone through, how are you going to handle it this time? And so this idea of like, there will be no more sea, and the beast will be thrown into hell, into the unconscious, or like it will be thrown away basically, and then we'll be allowed to come back 1,000 years later one more time, is like this idea that like the parts of humanity, the parts of the collective conscious that cause that we repress, that causes all this toxic shit to happen, will be gone. We will learn how to deal with it. It will no longer go to our unconscious. We will learn how to deal with it. And for whatever that 1,000 years actually is in real life, I don't know. Nobody probably knows. For that amount of time, we will be working on dealing with issues as they come up, instead of sending them to our unconscious so that they can leak out in toxic, unconscious ways. So we will be learning how to, during this period of transformation, this apocalypse, we will be learning how to deal with the issues as they arise rather than sending them to our unconscious. And then the idea of the beast coming back up one more time is okay, we're going to test. How do you deal with this now? Like, it's essentially the test of have we overcome this issue? How long does this apocalypse last? I would argue that it's been going on for a long time, and it's probably going to continue to go on for a long time. This feels like a bit of a peak to me. I know, like, I didn't exist through most of history, but it just feels like a lot is happening and a lot of people are picking up on it. Although it also could be that it's something that just cyclically happens every so often. I think both are probably true. To us, to maybe recorded human history, it seems like something that is like, this is the first time. But for the entire collective of like existence, like universally, it's probably, I think maybe it's probably just like a cyclical thing that happens. I don't feel like it's something like this thing that we like to do where we turn everything into like this big cinematic event that happens quickly. I don't think we'll ever see that. I don't think that's something that happens. I don't think there's this grandiose moment where you go, this is the climax. I think that things are just going to happen and amplify and then slow down and then slow down and then slow down. I don't think there's ever one specific moment where you're like, oh, the god is coming down from the sky and scooping up all the humans. You know, like there's no like cinematic apocalyptic event. I think it's just something that is happening. It's been happening. It's going to continue happening. And we will slowly go through the process of transformation. From our perspectives, it'll be something that is lifetimes long. I do think that basically how willing humanity is to surrender to the process is how quickly and how easily that process flows. Although I don't see a reality in which enough of humanity easily flows with the process for it to not be dragged on and on and on and on and on. Like, if we all collectively decided we wanted to go through this process and believed in this process, maybe it would happen quickly, but that's never going to happen because we are all very unique. We all have our own free will and autonomy. I also think there are people who unconsciously desire this idea of this like chaotic, apocalyptic, destructive reality. And so they're not going to let go of that. They don't want to let go of like the destructive, chaotic version of the apocalypse, of the uncovering, of the revealing. They're kind of into it. They kind of enjoy it, whether they want to admit it or not. So they're just not going to let go of it. They're going to refuse to surrender to the actual message that is given very clearly in many different beliefs, which is go within, heal yourself to heal the world. Be the change you wish to see. Heal yourself to heal the world. It's pretty much in every single religion and philosophy. Heal yourself to heal the world. Go within. But a lot of people are really into, I don't know, this could be something, obviously it's going to transform at some point. But I think a lot of people are into the destructive narrative. And so they're just going to continue to want that. But ultimately, the process is still going to unfold. It's just a matter of how quickly and how easily it unfolds. Ultimately, individually and collectively, we'll be repeatedly given opportunities to deal with our unconscious issues and learn how to not send things to the unconscious. And how quickly we figure that out will be different for every person, but it's eventually going to happen. And we're eventually going to transform collectively. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thanks. Bye.